We live in a world that is obsessed with speed. We want fast food, fast internet, and even faster success. We feel like if we haven't made it by a certain age, we have failed. But what if I told you that the most beautiful things in life, the things that truly change your soul, cannot be rushed? Today, I want to tell you the story of an old gardener named Thomas. He spent 3,650 days, 10 long years, tending to a plant that looked like nothing more than a dead stick. His neighbors laughed at him, his own family doubted him. But Thomas knew a secret about time that most of us have forgotten. If you feel like you are working hard but seeing no results, if you feel like you are behind in life, then you need to hear why Thomas waited. Thomas lived in a village famous for its gardens. Every spring, the village was a burst of color: bright red roses, tall sunflowers, and thick blankets of lavender. The villagers took pride in how quickly they could make their gardens grow. They used the best fertilizers and the newest tools. They wanted results, and they wanted them now. Thomas, however, was different. In the center of his modest garden sat a large plain clay pot, and inside that pot was nothing. At least, that's what it looked like. To anyone walking by, it looked like a pot of dry dirt with a single brown, leafless stalk sticking out of the middle. "Thomas!" His neighbor, a young man named Marcus, would call out over the fence. "I've planted 3 different sets of lilies in the time you've been staring at that stick. Why do you waste your water on it? Throw it away and plant some tulips. They'll be up in a few weeks." Thomas would just smile, his eyes crinkling at the corners. He would gently pour a bit of water onto the soil and say, "Some things grow in the sun, Marcus, but other things need to grow in the dark first." Marcus would shake his head and walk away. He didn't understand. Nobody did. Year 1 passed. The stalk stayed brown. Year 3 passed. The stalk didn't grow an inch. By year 5, Thomas's own son came to visit. He looked at the pot and felt a pang of sadness for his father. "Father," he said softly, "you are getting older. Your back hurts when you bend over to weed this garden. Why are you spending your energy on something that is clearly dead? It's been 5 years. If it was going to bloom, it would have bloomed by now. Don't you think it's time to let it go?" Thomas looked at the pot. He touched the rough, dry bark of the stalk. "Son," he said, "nature doesn't have a watch. It only has a season. This plant isn't dead. It's just busy." But as the years went on, the busyness of the plant was invisible. Thomas faced many winters of the soul. There were times when the frost was so bitter that he had to stay up all night, wrapping the pot in old blankets to keep the soil from freezing. There were summers of drought, where he gave the plant the last of his own drinking water. He was tired, his knees ached, and the voices of the village grew louder. They started calling him the Mad Gardener. They used him as a warning to their children. Don't be like Thomas, don't waste your life waiting for nothing. Can you imagine that? To work for years on something that gives you nothing back? To have the people you love tell you that you are wasting your time? Most of us quit our dreams after a few months of no results. Thomas was heading into year 9. He began to have his own doubts. He would sit by the pot at night and whisper, "Am I wrong? Have I missed my life waiting for a miracle that isn't coming?" It was the middle of the 10th year, a hot, humid summer night. Thomas was almost 80 years old now. He sat on his porch, looking at the same brown stalk. He had decided that if nothing happened by the end of this season, he would finally admit defeat. He felt a heavy sadness in his chest. But then, the air changed. A scent began to drift through the garden. It wasn't the smell of roses or lilies. It was something deep, sweet, and intoxicating. It smelled like honey and starlight. Thomas stood up, his heart racing. He grabbed his lantern and walked to the clay pot. Under the light of the full moon, the brown stalk had cracked, and from that crack, a tiny silver bud had emerged. As Thomas watched, the bud began to tremble. It started to unfurl, not with the frantic energy of a common flower, but with a slow, majestic grace. By midnight, the flower was fully open. It was the queen of the night, a flower that takes a decade to gather the energy to bloom, and when it does, it only lasts for one single night. It was breathtaking. The petals were a translucent white that seemed to glow from within. It was larger than a man's hand and more beautiful than any flower in the history of the village. The scent was so powerful that neighbors began to wake up. One by one, they came to Thomas's fence. Marcus was there. Thomas's son was there. They stood in absolute silence, humbled by the sight. They realized that for 10 years, while they were planting and pulling up common flowers, this plant was doing something much deeper. It was building a root system strong enough to support a masterpiece. It wasn't doing nothing. It was preparing for a moment of perfection. By dawn, the flower began to wither. By sunrise, it was gone. The neighbors looked at the empty stalk and then at Thomas. Marcus asked, "Was it worth it? 10 years of work for just a few hours of beauty?" Thomas looked at his hands, scarred, dirty, and strong. He looked at his garden, which was now filled with people who were finally still, finally quiet. "You think I waited 10 years for the flower," Thomas said gently, "but the flower was just the gift at the end. I didn't wait 10 years for the bloom. I spent 10 years becoming a man who has the patience to appreciate it." My friends, what are you gardening in your life right now? Is it a business that isn't making money yet? Is it a skill you're trying to learn that feels impossible? Is it a dream that everyone else says is a dead stick? We live in a world that judges us by our blooms. We are told that if we aren't showing results every day, we are failing. But some of the greatest things you will ever achieve are currently growing in the dark. Patience is not just waiting. Patience is the work you do while the results are invisible. It is the character you build when the world is laughing at you. If your pot looks empty today, don't throw it away. Don't plant lilies just because they grow fast. If you have a queen of the night dream, give it the 10 years it deserves. Your roots are growing. Your season is coming. And when you finally bloom, the world won't be asking why it took so long. They will be standing in awe of the person you became while you waited. Trust the process. Keep watering the dirt.